Welcome to church now that we're back in action with Sunday school. So we have to have a once upon a time story today, because after all, it's, kid time. So once upon a time, a chicken and a pig were walking together, discussing life's meaning and all sorts of philosophical matters, including the problem of world hunger. You didn't realize that they discussed these things, but that's because you do not speak pig or chicken. The chicken suggested that between her species and the pigs, they could in fact provide everyone in the world with a good breakfast of bacon and eggs every morning. The pig, however, thought long and hard about this, and finally he snorted and said, "That's okay for you to say, because from you that's only a contribution. But from me, that's a total commitment." Life on the line. Jesus said these words today that we find shocking. "If anyone comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, even their own life, such a person cannot be my disciple. And whoever does not carry their cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." Talk about a total commitment. Of all the disturbing things that Jesus has ever said, and he said quite a few, this definitely comes into the top 10. And how on earth does it square with the same Jesus who told us to love our enemies? How does that work out? And how does it fit with the Jesus who said that the world will know us by our love? What is all of this hate speech about? Fortunately, Jesus did not literally mean hate as we use the word hate. He was using hyperbole or exaggeration. And in addition, he was also using a Semitic turn of phrase, an expression that meant to show preference. In the Old Testament, we're told that Jacob loved Rachel and hated Leah. He didn't really hate Leah, literally. He just preferred Rachel. We are to love God so much that the loving feelings that we have for our family in comparison are like hate. God, and in this case Jesus, comes first. What should strike us, and what no doubt struck those original followers of Jesus, is that this is a very unreasonable demand for any human being to make. It's insane. Coming from a human being, this has got to be one of the most narcissistic, unbelievable demands a person could come up with. Love me more than anyone and anything else, even your family? Who would say that kind of a thing? Any person making that kind of demand on us should be rejected immediately. The only one who can make this kind of claim on our lives is God. And by making this demand, Jesus actually reveals who he is. Jesus told us that he must come first and that the cost of following him will be high. Choosing to follow Jesus is not a casual decision. And he gave his followers two short illustrations to make the point. When a landowner starts work on a tower, doesn't he first figure out how much money he has to see if he actually can finish the project all of the way? If he doesn't, and it's only halfway built, he'll look like a fool. Even around the world today, there are a lot of fools. People who started building without having the funding in place. There are half-built towers and structures all over the place, falling to ruin and being a blot on the landscape because the cost was not counted at the beginning. And what king goes into war without first figuring out if he has a chance to win? If the enemy has far greater numbers, shouldn't he first try to negotiate a peace settlement with that other king before he's completely wiped out? These are very down-to-earth pictures that anyone could relate to. Now here is the context. Jesus was entering the final phase of his ministry. In the process, he had gathered a large number of followers. But many of these people were superficial in their support of Jesus. They were there because it was exciting. It was a new thing. And this, unfortunately, is human nature. In any great movement, there are always people there who are there for the emotional high. It's all exciting. We're going to march. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. But these same people, when the going gets tough, tend to disappear quietly into the woodwork, never to be seen again. We even know this from our personal lives. How many of us have had a friend who we thought was a real friend, who said to us, I'm going to be there for you? And then we hit a rough patch, a crisis. Something happened to us that was very bad. And when we needed help and we reached out to that person, they were just simply not there, gone. We call them fair weather friends. You know who your friends really are when you're going through tough times. And so Jesus was really speaking to the fair weather followers out there and letting them know that they had to make a decision. Jesus was not fooled by the size of the crowd. He knew that many of these people would disappear at the first sign of trouble. And so he spoke very plainly to them about counting the cost and putting him first. He deliberately shocked them. Isn't that shocking that Jesus would deliberately shock somebody? He did it a lot. He deliberately used these kind of words and said these things to wake them up. And he put himself at the same level as God in terms of allegiance, a point that could not be missed. Many of these people were looking for a hero, somebody to come in and deliver them. They didn't want a God who demanded their whole allegiance, total commitment, full participation. How inconvenient is that? They wanted somebody who would come in and do everything for them. We always need to beware of leaders who say they're going to do everything for us. They were looking for a different kind of salvation. They wanted a political and material salvation. They wanted to get rid of the Romans. They wanted to be on top of the pile again. They wanted to be prosperous and in control. They certainly did not want what Jesus actually came to give us. Jesus says that unless we put him before our parents, our spouses, our children, and even our own lives, we cannot be his disciples. But in practical terms, what does this mean? This primary allegiance. In the earliest days of the church and even around the world today, this could mean persecution and even death. We are very fortunate where we live, the time and the place. We're not going to be asked to pay that price. But we have sisters and brothers around the world in majority Muslim nations who face death every day. Those in China face persecution, imprisonment, death every day. For some reason I cannot fathom, all of the nations that espouse communism are afraid of anything that smacks of religion. They persecute Muslims and Christians both. We're not there, but we need to not forget those who are. But what about the rest of life? What about when we're not asked to make that ultimate commitment and sacrifice? When our lives are not on the line, people have looked for ways to express their total devotion to Christ, believing that if they can't die for Jesus, at least they better have a lot of inconvenience. Does it mean that we are supposed to sit around all day and read our Bibles and pray? Do we ask other people to go to work for us so that we can stay home and be holy? Do we avoid marriage and children because that's an entanglement and spend our lives in secluded meditation? Do we sell everything we have and go out and proselytize on the streets as a homeless person? These have all been approaches that people have taken throughout time. Short of martyrdom, they have felt they had to do something great and drastic. And yet, God put us on earth to connect with people where we are, in our families, in our societies, in our world, to help one another. Our relationship with God is just that. It is a relationship. And because it is an intentional relationship, the best comparison I could come up with is marriage. When we marry, we promise to be faithful to that other person in good times and bad, whether we feel like it or not. We promise to put that person first, before our friends and family. The wife comes before mom, even if mom doesn't like it. We promise to be loyal. No secret bank accounts, no lover on the side. We promise to be fully with that person and for that person and not betray their confidences and not humiliate them before others. Now, do human beings fail? Yes. They fail all the time to keep these promises. And yet these are the promises that we make. The intentional promises that we make. And those who commit in this way, when two people work together, even going through times that feel dry and difficult, come out the other side strong. And the fact is, our marital relationship affects every other relationship we have. Every other relationship we have. There are things that we do or we don't do because of our spouse. Ask Vicki how many times she gets to eat liver. Just about never. Has to go somewhere else to eat liver. We make sacrifices for the other person. We change the way we act and what we do to support the other person. And people know us as a unit. The church, in and Jesus are like a married couple. We're even called the bride of Christ. Our calling, our relationship with God is that kind of an intentional, committed relationship that changes and affects every other relationship we have because we are in that primary relationship with God. It will change how we treat everyone else. It will change every single aspect of our lives. We are in a covenant relationship with God. Now, sometimes this may cause a bit of a jolt to us to discover if we commit ourselves to Christ for the first time or we recommit ourselves, that this puts us at odds with a lot of what goes on in our culture. We suddenly feel a little bit on the outside. Particularly in our politically tense environment, we can end up feeling acutely uncomfortable. Because one of the more disturbing characteristics of modern society is this thing called civil religion, where we have conflated whatever our faith is with patriotism. We have equated Christianity with being an American, and we have combined the two, as if to be a patriot is to be Christian, and to be Christian is to be a patriot. And that is actually not true. There are whole books written on the subject. Somehow to be patriotic is always right, isn't it? Is it? When we declare America first, shouldn't we remember that Germany once declared Germany first? That Nazi Germany was all about nationalism? When we put self-advancement first, shouldn't we remember that God said to put the kingdom of God first? We are not to seek our national well-being above God's will. And that is a very hard truth to grapple with in this society. We may love and support our country. We may have even served in the military for our country. And this is not wrong, but we should never do so blindly, because every nation is made up of sinners. And we belong not to these nations on earth, but to our heavenly nation. Our citizenship is above. And so with our priorities with Jesus first, it will make us good citizens, because we will demand truth and justice, and we will take a stand for what God wants, but it will not make us blind followers. We will have our eyes open, and we will stand for what is right. Making a profit won't be a good enough reason to do something. We'll want to know, is anyone hurt in the process? Care for the environment will be important because God gave us this planet. We may end up defending those who other people hate. We may protect our Muslim neighbors when extremists come looking for them. Just as in Nazi Germany, faithful Christians hid Jews from death. We will be called to take a stand to protect people in this way. And when we put God first, we will be very hard to buttonhole in a society that likes to put people into nice, neat little boxes, because we will care deeply about people, about justice, and about serving God. God refuses to be a casual lover or a one-night stand. God is committed to us completely and asks us to be committed in return. Nor is God someone who looks at us superficially and says, you know, upon closer inspection, I've decided that that one has a few defects and I don't want them. No, God knows everything about us, including our defects and our struggles, and loves us in good times and in bad. God will never let us go. God will never abandon us. God's commitment to us is absolute. And Jesus makes it clear that what God asks of us is absolute, total commitment in return. Amen.